I just got done reading The Last Spark, which is a brand new Punishing Graven global story that just released on the 17th. And I want to talk about my thoughts and opinions on this one. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So talking about the story, I think the pacing was very well done. I'm honestly very happy with some of the key points in this story. And I think it's really cool to see the behind the scenes of what's going on in Babylonia. Just seeing like the heading, like the butting of heads of a lot of the big authorities on Babylonia, and just starting to realize that not everything is as peachy as it seems. And it's really hard to keep up with saving humanity. And a lot of people have a lot of different routes and a lot of different paths that they think is the right one. And unfortunately, that is just kind of suffering the people who were on Babylonia and the Commandant, which is us, and we're being used more as a bargaining chip. And it was really nice to just see Vera kind of come out of her shell and become more of a developed character. I think it was really cool because at the beginning, she was more of like, yes, I'm doing this as a mission that I was assigned to for the guaranteed safety of my crew. But as she kind of developed, you can see that she starts to get a little bit of emotion and a little bit of like understanding of what was going on in the big picture. Once she saves us, we get the coordinates to Atlantis, which is considered a 0-point reactor, and kind of the significance of what a 0-point reactor is. This is awesome to see that we're starting to dive into the punishing virus, where it came from, what's going on with it, and just a little backstory. The Atlantis, which is what we're on, is a 0-point reactor. It's the second one, and the first one was actually responsible for the punishing virus. Basically, what we were trying to do at this point is harness this energy to make it powerful, like more powerful than the sun. We are like, they're basically the researchers on Atlantis were to the point where they're like, okay, we no longer need to think about what the sun does to power the world. We know how to create everything into energy. We know how to just make stuff go into this. So this research was mainly just done to have an infinite resource of energy for humanity. And you can see that in some ways, a lot of this kind of flirts with the idea that humanity is a little bit too greedy sometimes. And ultimately it led to the downfall of a lot of different things when the punishing virus was made in that first reactor. And the fact that we kind of went into the logs and stuff like that of what was happening in Atlantis was just mainly like they were aware basically after a certain period of time that the first reactor had made this punishing virus, and it was their mission to kind of recreate it or try to recreate it in a way that they could reverse engineer it, maybe make some sort of cure out of it. And they went to this thing where they were basically unaffected because they were a city out on sea, and they had the ability to basically submerge the entire city and kind of shut themselves off from the rest of Earth, from land and all this different stuff. And they had about 25 months of rations, given the fact that they actually had to start cutting departments and let them die to famine, basically. So the story gets really deep really fast, and you can start to see that not only the punishing virus as a threat, but what actually happens when these researchers are kind of prompted to have to do something so dramatic like this and limit the resources they have just to make sure the research team can stay alive long enough to try to recreate this thing so they can hopefully get some sort of cure. And they have to cut themselves from the outside world. Basically, they had no way of getting rations or any kind of supplies from anybody because they didn't want to run the risk of getting the punishing virus and then everything that they had worked up to this point to be for, you know, not for pretty much just to be thrown under the gutter and not be able to be effective or not. So they had to cut themselves out completely, which also meant that a lot of people on that ship had to take sacrifices in their own departments and their own lives. And just kind of the development of the story is it's phenomenal. It's nice to see that not only the punishing virus is like, it's obviously messing with humans and it's messing with the mechanics and all the different things that are going around the world and just starting to corrupt everything, destroy Earth. But it's nice to see kind of a storyline that's like, okay, it obviously is in relation to the punishing virus, but it's not a direct relation. It's like something that, you know, it's dramatic and stuff like that. And they have to make decisions not based just on the fact that people are infected, but like kind of what do they need to do next? What kind of steps do they need to take in the hopes of kind of resolving this for humanity? They don't even really know what's going on at this point. They're just shutting themselves off in order to hopefully be able to survive or maybe even cure people once it's all done. And it just gets really sad really quickly. So that's basically where we're at in the main kind of plot, really the present time. And it was really nice to see that we had a couple of different story driven arcs here. And I really like when stories are able to tell multiple paths at the same time and they all converge into one. That's one of my favorite forms of storytelling. And this one does it like on the nail on the head. It's basically having the past of the researchers, what they were doing, and kind of living the lives of what they were going through and having to make these choices and kind of learning about the virus, as well as us, Vera, and just kind of going through like, okay, we need to figure out what this last little piece of information was. Because basically the head researcher was able to find a good, like the last spark is basically what it's called. Just something, a little piece of information that could help us with the punishing virus. Is like their last thing that they were able to do after almost 2 years of research. They were finally able to produce this to kind of help us move forward and they had it, and we were basically trying to find it and try to get it into Babylonia so we can maybe do some more research and kind of figure out what's going on from there. But it was basically their last spark, the last thing that they had. And it was so nice to kind of see the storyline of the researchers and us also trying to figure out our way and navigating through this, while we were also trying to figure out what the Ascendant Lamia was trying to do there. We had encountered her before, and it's just nice to kind of see like, okay, what's going on with her? Why is she here? And more seemingly, why is she able to get past security? She was not having to go through the same hoops we are as, you know, intruders basically on this area. We were going through security. We're trying to like make sure the alarms weren't going off and all this different stuff. But seemingly Lamia was just able to kind of proceed wherever she wanted to go and get to the control terminal and basically start sinking this thing. So the big kind of arc here was the fact that the city itself was actually sinking. It didn't have any security to kind of deal with the pressure once it sunk, because a lot of the stuff was made and dealt with by humans and like the different machines and stuff like that. And since these humans had been wiped from there, they had none of this to run the actual security systems and stuff like that to deal with the pressure that was going to happen. So once the city actually sunk, they were going to lose their chance to that last spark and that little piece of information that could ultimately be the turntable for Babylonia to get that punishing virus at least solved or figured out in some way. So that was a big arc for us, is just trying to figure out, okay, first off, how do we stop the sinking city? If we can't stop this one, how do we actually get to where this was at? Because initially they didn't actually know where the research was, and they were following these logs of the researchers and kind of where that was actually going towards. So I think this is really phenomenal. I think it was a really good story. And then once we actually figured out what was going on with the Ascendant and why Lamia was actually part of this and where she came from, it was actually pretty sad. Her backstory actually gives a lot of different detail on why she kind of acts the way she does, because up till this point it was really kind of a mystery. Like she seemingly was lost a lot of the time, or her memory wasn't quite there, and now we actually get a glimpse of why she's like that, why she's not very confident, and why she actually acts like that. It's actually incredibly sad. So that is one of the reasons that she's able to kind of progress there, because she actually grew up there. That was where she was born. She was forced to be kind of in this predicament where she didn't have a lot of, you know, educational avenues and stuff like that, because it was very limited. Her rations were obviously very limited, and she had to undergo a very intense surgery to even make her to what she was at this point, because she wanted to be useful, to be able to get more rations and be able to stay alive. It was really critical to what happened to her, and she actually lost the whole point of why she left in the first place, which is why she was kind of in this wandering state, just knowing that she had to get to these exact coordinates, but she couldn't remember why or what. But when she finally got there, some of those memories started coming back. And then just seeing the end where Vera and Lamia have this final fight and all the different CGs that went into it, I gotta say it's phenomenal on the kind of send-off that happened at the end of this one. And just the fact that we got a little bit of a glimpse that Lamia actually decided to stop the city from sinking. And the whole purpose that she was doing this is because she wanted to forget. She wanted people not to have to ever see it again. She wanted it to be her final like dream, her little place that she could always think of, that she wants to come back for whatever reason, and she didn't want anybody else to have access to it or at least know about it anymore. She wanted to be it to be special for her, and so she wanted to sink it and be rid of it in some sense, so she could always have it in the back of her mind as some sort of like goal or some sort of thing that she wanted to eventually remember and stuff like that. But at the ultimate decision at the end, she decided to actually just keep it, to have it raised back up. And at that point, we didn't know who it was. We're like, okay, well, what the heck? Why did this all of a sudden start raising at the very last moment? But it ended up being her. So it's really kind of interesting to see where that's going to take off and what kind of progression that happens with her as an Ascendant, and how she kind of got her memories back and how she's going to proceed moving forward. At the end of the day, I think it's a really good story. I think it had a lot of deep moments about how humanity is just really on the repeating history thing, and then just the fact that when it comes to being greedy, humanity is just one of those things that just continuously does so. But it's up to us at this point moving forward what we decide to do with the information that we got from this place, and what we're going to do next way, and like kind of the steps that Babylonia is going to take in order to progress. And it's honestly just interesting to see, because do they become greedy again? Do they try to recreate the 0-point reactors? What happens with the other reactors? What happened with them? Because they're all in pursuit of the same kind of mission. And could that have happened? The punishing virus happen at any one of those? It's just one of those mysteries that leaves at the end of this chapter, and one way that makes me very excited for the next one.